I am so glad that we have a chance to talk to you about this. 10 years in the making?
Yeah.
Really almost 12 now, right?
let me think. So you start thinking about this in your last year in office.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 2016. So that was 10 years ago when you're starting to conceive of it. And that's when you start thinking about selecting the site and
How
the
excited were you
architects and so forth.
when you started to think about it? Was it... Some people have said it's almost, oh, now I've got to do this. It's almost like a burden. Did it feel like
It didn't
an
feel like a
opportunity for you?
burden, but it felt like a distraction because at the time you're still working on presidential stuff. So you delegate a bunch of decisions and say, I'll worry about that later. But look, it's been a long journey. You had COVID in between, which obviously threw off schedules and budgets in all kinds of ways. We literally started construction, and then suddenly COVID hits, and that changed things a lot. We're not alone in that. And the great thing about it, though, was I think there was a consistency of vision on what we were trying to accomplish with the center. That didn't vary much. Michelle and I had a very clear sense that we wanted this to be a place that would attract visitors from around the world, that would, record what happened during my presidency, but that more than anything was a vital, alive, dynamic place for the south side of Chicago and the city of Chicago, for kids in the neighborhood, that it was going to be used. And that, I think, more than anything, shaped how we thought about what this thing would end up being.
I think about kids in the neighborhood. You met with a group of young black men.
Yeah.
You were seated in a circle in
Right.
room 208 of
Right.
Hyde Park Academy, right across the street
Right.
from the campus now. And it was an extraordinary conversation. You were very honest with them.
Right.
You talked about making the kind of boneheaded decisions that a lot of teenagers make.
Right.
You talked to them about experimenting with drugs. And it
Right.
was so unusual that one of the kids said, "Wait, are you talking about yourself?"
Yeah.
And out of that meeting, we know that the My Brother's Keeper initiative was one of the things that grew out of that meeting, because
Right.
later that year you announced that.
Right.
But I wonder if that meeting has lived on inside you in other ways, because it happened right across the street from where you decided to build the campus. Did that animate how you thought about the location, the design, the programming, the young people who live in an area that doesn't see this kind of shine and attention?
Well, the location, in part, was determined by the fact that this is the epicenter of my life in Chicago, right? Within a 4 or 5 mile radius of that site. I first came to Chicago. I got my first apartment there. I met my wife there. My children were born there. My wife grew up there. Our wedding reception was there. I made my announcement for my first presidential, or for my first political campaign there. I taught law school there. So, that was part of what made that site so attractive to us. But, as you say, one of the things that I learned when I moved to Chicago, and one of the things that Michelle had firsthand experience with growing up in Chicago, was even though the south side of Chicago runs on the lakefront just like the north side of Chicago does, for a whole bunch of historical reasons, the parks, the open spaces, the public facilities in those communities were underinvested in relative to other neighborhoods in Chicago. And so for a long time, I would drive through Lincoln Park in the north side of Chicago, and you'd look around, and there are people playing volleyball, and there are tennis courts, and there are kiosks, and there's programming, and museums, and then Jackson Park, which was just as beautiful, was empty.
Yeah.
And that sent a message. And when I was organizing and when I was serving as a state legislator, I was always shocked when you'd hear stories from kids who would say, well, I've actually never gone to the lakefront.
Even though they lived on the south side. It was right there.
They lived in Englewood, but it's just, it felt foreign to them. Much less going to the Art Institute downtown. That did not feel like it belonged to them. And so part of me having those conversations at Hyde Park Academy, the high school right across the street from where the center is going to be, is in those conversations I said, I am no different than you. That's the message I wanted to send to them. I had some good breaks. My environment was more forgiving than yours, but in you I see the same talent, the same possibility, and I want you to see it too. And so part of what I wanted the center to be is a physical manifestation of that message. I want them to start realizing, yeah, amazing art. That's part of my life. That belongs to me. The idea that, I could make my community better, my world better, and that's inside me. I want to see examples of that, and so we've already had a few of those same high school kids come in to give us a little bit of a focus group, and